Now, if I may, present Charlie with his.
Is it better to be pessimistic? One's never disappointed by bad outcomes. However, one may miss out on some wonderful experiences because one has decided not to try. Or is it better to be optimistic? Sometimes we can fake it until we make it. Other times we are deluded by false expectations. The nice thing about pessimism is that you are either proven right or pleasantly surprised. The nice thing about optimism is that failure is merely a learning experience, and you succeed at things that others have failed to try. We have just lived through a week of optimism and pessimism. An approaching hurricane focuses us. Now, there are at least 3 types of optimism: denial, obliviousness, and confidence. Denial says nothing bad will ever happen, and oftentimes this is true. The earliest spaghetti maps of a hurricane show all the possible paths that a hurricane could take, and by definition, most of them are wrong. In the case of Dorian, Alabama had nothing to fear. For Alabamians, denial was a perfectly good strategy. Warnings could be ignored without consequence. But sometimes deniers live on fantasy, like, I am tough enough to stand anything, or that God will protect me. They deny the randomness of life and the fact that the rain falls on the just and the unjust. Obliviousness is less conscious than denial. One can be so blinded by hope that doesn't even look for danger. They never check to see if their house is built on a floodplain. They do not know if any rivers are nearby. They never watch a weather report. They are blissfully unaware of any danger they are in. These are the same people who turn without signaling, walk into traffic while looking at their phone. They pave their patio so the water runs into their neighbor's yard. They leave campfires smoldering as they leave the park. And some of these people just seem to live a charmed life. They just assume that everything is good, nothing ever happens to them. They do not see the wreckage that they leave in their wake. They seem to even praise God when the storm kills other people instead of them. They actually believe that they are God's favorite. Now, the confident believe that any problem can be overcome. They are problem solvers. They know a hurricane is coming. They put sandbags by the door. They board up their windows. They buy a generator in case the power goes out. They stock up on non-perishable food. They are confident because they are ready for anything. The optimism is not about external situations. They have faith in themselves and they can overcome any obstacle. They take control of their lives. Pessimism, on the other hand, there are at least 3 types: the nihilist, the cursed, and the guilty. The nihilist believes that nothing has meaning. Good is only a temporary interruption of the downward spiral we are all in. Life stinks and then you die. So the hurricane didn't get you this time, but maybe next time. But you'll probably die of something else before the next hurricane comes. You can't escape. the cursed, feel unlucky. They are ashamed and think that somehow they deserve all the bad things that happen. There's no use in preparing for a hurricane. If my time is up, it is fate. Why take precautions? I know someone who was killed while wearing a safety belt. I know someone who ate well and exercised and still died young. A tornado hit my house, and the house across the street is perfect. I'm cursed. Now, the guilty take the blame for everything they have done. And when they get praise, they fear that they will be found out to be a fraud. They might have gotten through this last hurricane saying, I spent too much money on hurricane prep and nothing happened. I'm such a wasteful person. Or in some other part of the state, they say, I forgot the one thing I needed to prepare for this hurricane. I'm so stupid. Martin Seligman, author of the book Learned Optimism, describes optimism and pessimism and says it depends on three characteristics. This would be a good time to pull out that little slip of paper in your order of service. He talks about permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. Now, permanence means, is the condition long-lasting? Optimists feel that good events are the norm and bad events are temporary setbacks. We live in the South, where the weather is great most of the time. Pessimists feel that bad events are the norm and good events are flukes. We live in hurricane country. We're lucky it wasn't worse. Pervasiveness is a tricky one. It's about the state of being of who you are, whether you are a blessed or cursed person. Optimists think that good things happen to them because they're good. I put out positive energy into the world and the world loves me back. I call them self-righteous. They'll say, I am blessed. Pessimists seem to think that bad things happen because they are bad. I call that shame. They say, I am cursed. Why did God do this to me, or that the universe conspired against me personally? Personalization is not about who you are, what type of person you are. It's about your personal actions. Is it something I did? Optimists think good things are because of what they did, and bad things are blamed on actions that other people do. I have to make sure that my house is elevated and strong because polluters are making hurricanes worse. Pessimists think that when something goes wrong, that it's their fault. And if something goes right, they give credit to others. I should have never built in a hurricane zone. I only survived because of the kindness of strangers. Now, the optimist and the pessimist in those statements actually might be factually correct. They can both be right at the same time. The realist is able to realize the complexity of life and adjust to the situation. If I choose to live in a hurricane zone, I better build high and strong because people are making global warming worse. Nevertheless, there are good people who will help me if I'm in need. Because we really hate that four-wheel drive that's ahead of us in traffic that cuts us off in traffic and is only getting 10 miles per gallon. What a wasteful person. I hope they come by my house when I'm flooded. Let me explain permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization as they relate to optimism, pessimism, and realism. For permanence, the optimist believes that only the good is permanent. And I'm reading across your chart there. For the pessimist, only the bad is permanent. But the realist understands that both good and bad are transient. As far as pervasiveness, the optimist will say, I am blessed, lucky, and good. The pessimist will say, I am cursed, unlucky, and bad. But most of us are realists and know, we're pretty much a mixed bag. As far as personalization, the optimist will always take credit, but never take blame. The pessimist will never take credit, but always take blame. But the realist will say, I recognize those who helped me, and I recognize those who did not. The optimist thinks only the good is permanent, that they are lucky, blessed, and good, and they always take the credit, but never take the blame. The pessimist, only the bad is permanent. They feel unlucky and cursed, and they never take the credit, but they always take the blame. The realist realizes that both good and bad are transient, that they're a mixture of those things, and they assess people realistically. Pure optimism in a theistic framework would say God is good and blesses me, so I do the right thing. In a more secular sense, the world is good, the source of life, it cares for me, so I will care for it. Pure pessimism in a theistic sense is God created evil and curses me, so why should I even try? Or in a secular sense, the universe doesn't care. Everything dies. I might as well give up. In some ways, we can control our beliefs. We can make changes in where we are. If we're an optimist and are often disappointed when things don't work out the way we want, or if we're a pessimist and we get stuck there. Martin Seligman wrote a book called Learned Optimism, specifically to help pessimists who were stuck. And you can learn to reframe whatever's happened to you in a more positive light. Maybe it wasn't your fault. Maybe you are not always unlucky. Maybe it was just this time. And this type of cognitive psychology is helpful. It is Seligman's technique is a cognitive behavioral technique that does not address the physical reasons for depression. I took his little test online, and I came out moderately pessimistic. And that's a good place to be, especially when I'm not taking medication. Well, you know, I've been doing pretty well this past year, but there are times when I know that, you know, I think the other thing was moderately hopeless. I'm good with moderately hopeless because that's the upswing for me. Yeah. But there are times in my life where I have been cognitively unable to get up to moderately hopeless. I say, wow, that distant dream. But, it's hard to pull oneself up by one's bootstraps when one doesn't have the will to pull. And also, as a psychologist, he focuses on the individual and not society. I mean, he has this great program, and I recommend this book to anybody for pulling somebody up, to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But it does not work for someone whose boots have been stolen. Pessimism is always seen as a problem. Even the pessimist will say, something's wrong. However, optimism is seldom seen as a problem. Optimists do not go to the psychiatrist to say, fix me. Now, I've been told that a minister's job is to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. So I'm about to do the latter. If things are going well, maybe you should look at yourself. Who has been harmed in the making of your success? Who has helped you? Have you thanked them? I, being a pessimist, am fearful of the pure optimist. An example is the oil executive who believes that they should drill in the Arctic because climate change is opening up new opportunities for them to make money at the expense of the climate, which will disrupt the economy and displace the people who have been living off the land in the Arctic. Well, that will make them easier to employ as low-wage workers in the high-risk jobs. It's just a win-win for everybody, or at least for me. The world is a source of wealth, and they deserve the wealth because they are willing to take action to exploit the wealth. It's all good. As long as they're making money, what could possibly be wrong? Now, we have mental institutions to protect the overly pessimistic from themselves. What institutions do we have to protect us from the overly optimistic? The people who think they deserve everything they've got, and they create the laws to make their theft legal, and then turn around and punish those who need to steal to survive. For the world to be balanced, it needs both pessimism and optimism. The self-righteous need to be pessimistic to see the needs of others. And the pessimists need to believe they deserve more than they're getting. We all need to be pessimistic enough to see the problems, yet optimistic enough to try and solve them. This will turn us into realists. As realists, we can understand that good and bad things are transient. But we can strive to sustain the good times and shorten the bad times. We realize that each of us is a mixture of good and evil, and we need to forgive each other precisely because we need each other. None of us is totally to blame, and no one deserves all the credit. We do not need saviors to fix us. We must do the work ourselves. And any villain we identify is not the cause of every problem. Do not blame the villain. Fix the problems that give rise to villainy. Optimism and pessimism are no substitute for the work we must do. Optimism says, nothing needs to be done. Pessimism says nothing can be done. Realism says we can find good work to do. Let us be a blessing to one another by sharing our blessings with all.